Welcome to the AQA YouTube channel. To navigate through the video, you can select specific chapters or subjects of the video. Enjoy watching and remember to subscribe.
Welcome everybody to our latest What's Out There online session on weight management and nutrition. I'll shortly hand over to our MC Nazim Erdem. Before we do, I'd like to just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and work and play on. Where I am, it's the people of the Wurundjeri Nation. I'd like to pay respects to those people, to their culture and traditions. I'd also like to pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and welcome any First Nations people who are joining us today. Thanks to all the panel for joining us. Naz will introduce you shortly. And thanks to all the people who are joining us today. So I'll hand over to Naz now. Thanks very much, Sal.
I'd like to welcome the panelists again and thank you for having in this webinar. I know there's a lot of people out there that we can't see that are watching in the background that have got a big interest in nutrition. You know, it's a big part of our health, especially in this COVID environment. It's a bit crazy. A lot of people, like myself, I know I've put on a few kilos and also my fitness is pretty a lot worse than it used to be 18 months ago. So, you know, I think it's going to be great to, you know, talk about ways of how we can overcome that. Just wanted to introduce the panel, starting off with Chantelle Elson, who's the dietitian at Austin Health, and we've got Bryn Fittall, who's the exercise physiologist at the Royal Talbot, Antonio Vecchio, and I'll get people to expand a bit more about who they are as well. So Antonio's got lived experience of spinal cord injury. Susana Valdes as well. We've got Thiedeman, who's also got lived experience. And last but not least, Marcus Sander as well. And if people don't know me, I had a spinal cord injury, broke my neck at C6 about 30 years ago. And, you know, I found diet is really important, you know, because you can let yourself go quite easily and it's coming back. That's the hard part. But there's ways to do that. So hopefully we'll learn more about that from, well, not only ourselves, but especially Bryn and Chantelle. Chantelle, can I get you to start off with, you know, your role there at the Royal Talbot and Austin Health?
Yeah, so I'm the dietitian for the spinal rehab unit at the Royal Talbot. I've been here for about 2.5 years now, and before that I was working in the community in spinal cord injury in New Zealand.
Thanks, Chantelle. Over to you, Bryn. So I know a lot of people would have done quite a bit of work going through rehab with you. Do you want to talk about, I guess, exercise physiology and how that relates to nutrition and diet and all that?
Yeah, so I'll talk a bit about, a common question is what is an exercise physiologist? So hopefully we explain that pretty well to people who do come through the service. So we are university qualified allied health professionals, and we really specialize in exercise. So exercise, you know, as medicine. So there's a lot of research out there showing all the benefits of exercise across a whole range of different health conditions. So in both in prevention and management. So, you know, things like spinal cord injury, obviously, but, you know, in the cancer space, you know, diabetes, weight management, all those sort of things. My role in the inpatient team, I work alongside the physios, and it's really about helping people work towards their functional goals by helping them improve their strength and their fitness, so their capacity to do everyday things.
Great, thanks very much, Bryn. And guys out there, so just wanted to let you know, if you've got any questions, please type away. You've got the Q&A function on your screen, and also you can chat. You can just put some notes in the chat there or raise your hand as well. And if you do, we'll come straight back to you and answer it any time. Antonio, just over to you. If we go to you, just want to see what the importance of diet and nutrition is in your mind.
Hi, thank you, Naz, and thank you everyone watching. I think for me, the importance of it is, so with my level of injury, C6, 7, I'm sort of right in that balance of having enough function to be independent. As I guess a quadriplegic, for me, it really is about, you know, having less weight, let's say, helps with transfers and all that. And I know that. I know I've been able, you know, when my weight management, when I was really heavy at one point, I wasn't able to do things like floor to chair and things like that, where part of being able to do that, other than sort of, I guess, practice and technique, but having that less weight is something that's helped with that. So I guess from an everyday living life, the weight management is important. Obviously then the flow and effect with the rest of the health by eating well, not eating processed foods. And I guess Naz, you've seen this, and people that know me have seen this. For me, it was really important. So I left Royal Talbot, and a year after I left Royal Talbot, I was, you know, just over 110 kilo. And 2 years later, I managed to get myself down just to 82 kilos. So it was a fair effort for me, but I do notice that my level of independence increased by just, you know, obviously a lot of factors, but weight management to me was a big one.
No, thanks, Antonio. Can we come back to that a little bit later? I'm really interested in knowing how you would have used your mind in, you know, losing all that weight, because that's not easy, you know, losing 30 kilos or anything like that, you know, that's pretty tough, and not everyone could do it, but you have to have a certain mindset to be able to do that. So you'd be quite interested in exploring that as well. If I go to Marcus now, Marcus, you, I know, take diet and nutrition quite heavily. I know your background was around health and fitness, so just wondering if you came up against any complications with your weight and how you dealt with it. And, you know, you would have had a good knowledge of what you need to do, but was it easy enough knowing what to do and actually doing it?
Yeah, thanks, Naz. G'day, everyone. Just for those that don't know me, I'm a T6 complete post 10 years. I think it's pretty common with most of us. Once you leave the Talbot, that's where the problem starts, because you're, you know, on the high level injury. So number one, your body doesn't burn the same amount of calories, but yet we seem to ingest the same amount of food. So basically doing the math, calories in versus calories out, it doesn't equate. So I was the same as everyone else. The first 2 years, I think I put on 15 kilos. So I had to get another chair because I started to, you know, basically not fit into my first chair. And I sort of thought to myself, geez, I should know better. I mean, I've been a PT and I'm into diet and nutrition. I've trained with athletes basically all my life, as well as being one. But saying and doing it can be quite difficult. So, you know, for me now, you know, I'm still basically my first chair now, post 10 years. I mean, I'm getting another one made up in the next sort of 4 weeks or so, but I've been in the same chair, which is good. So I've maintained my weight now pretty much for 10 years at about, sort of fluctuates between 82 and 85 at my heaviest. I'm 6'2". I carry a bit of weight upstairs. I'm top heavy, nothing in the legs like everyone else. But for me, the fine balance is still being able to enjoy your food, but being disciplined enough as well. So for me, yes, I've had to alter my calorie intake. I sort of eat between 1,500 and 1,800, depending on my activity levels. I'm fairly active. I sort of do weight-based training 3 days a week, as well as cardio, walking the dogs every day for 3Ks, plus a cardio session of between 30 and 40 minutes, moderate or high intensity sort of training on a Johnny G crank cycle, which is a hand cycle, and or I recently purchased a great bit of equipment which is a ski erg, a Concept 2 ski erg, which is basically an indoor rower. You just basically wheel into it, and it mimics the motion of sort of Nordic skiing. So that helps you burn calories, because it's quite hard to burn calories, as we all know, in a chair. So yeah, it's been challenging, but I try and eat a clean diet, but allow myself one day a week where I have a couple of cheat meals, because if you don't reward yourself, you won't stick to it with your discipline in your diet. So I try and drink 2 litres of water a day. I've ditched all sugary stuff, so no sugar. I stay away from processed food or highly processed foods, and try and keep my sodium and salt levels down. Eating healthy, you know, it's a life choice, but in the chair, as you know, the heavier you get, I think Antonio touched on it before with transferring. There's issues with skin breakdown, pressure sores and the like. So my experience has been, you know, I try and maintain a healthy weight and stay active for independence, mobility, basically.
Oh, very good. Thanks, Marcus. Very, very true. We go over to Duke. So I know in this COVID environment, especially, you know, a lot of us deal with weight gain and weight loss, and it's really hard. You know, I mean, we put a lot of effort into it, and again, what Antonio and Marcus said, you still have to be able to enjoy your food. You know, when you don't want to be eating wood dust all the time, because, or sawdust, I should say, because it might be doing you good. Yeah, you got to enjoy what you're eating as well, and there's no reason why you can't, as long as you're conscious, I think. So, Duke, do you want to expand on any of that?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Naz. Hi, everyone. My name's Duke, of course. I'm a 68-year-old who had a spinal injury 12 years ago. I've got titanium rod between T10, T11 and T12. And after a motorcycle accident, I went through Talbot, and most of my time now is spent trying to manage my weight. I've tried a lot of things just to try and lose weight. I seem to do a lot of exercise. I'm very active as far as playing para badminton. I play maybe 3 days a week, and I go to gym twice a week. So although I've doing a lot of exercise, which I enjoy, the real trouble is that during this lockdown and living at home with a wife that produces fantastic food, which I must sample, of course, I'm unfortunately putting on pounds or kilos. And I'm really feeling that exercise really assists me from both a mental thing as well as from a physiological thing. So I've gone through various things, and I'll explain later as to I was going to go through not stomach stapling, but bariatric surgery to try and assist, because unlike Marcus, probably Antonio, I'm not disciplined enough or not to do eating. So I started off before my accident about 100 kilos. I'm now 110, and I'd say maybe even 115. And I think in the last 6 months, I've probably put on about 10 kilos. So lack of exercise is quite a worry for me, being in my senior age.
Yeah, no, very good. Thanks, Duke. I want to go over to Susana now. Susana, like I always see her as fit. I know she's conscious with her diet. I think she's somewhat of an expert when it comes to different types of diets, and some diets are, you know, probably well known and some are experimental. Just wanted to see how you managed, Susana, to look after yourself, keeping your weight down.
Yeah, well, I had my injury back in 95, and I'm a T2 para, and back in my time, I was also a into gym and aerobics and all sorts of things, very much into fitness. But coming out of rehab, I put on, you know, I got up to around size 14, and I thought, geez, I think I better do something about this. So I went about and explored and went to doctors and asked them what I can do. And they said it's all about exercise and calories. So I went and bought myself first a calorie book counter and did all those things. And then I stumbled across a naturopath, and they put me on a diet which was proportion size. And that, I mean, all that was helping with my diet. And then there's also many years ago, about 20 years ago, there was a diet called 3-day diet, and it was very popular. It was based in America. So you ate three meals for 3 days. You had to follow this diet, and it worked on a chemical breakdown. So you could lose 10 pounds in 3 days, but you had to eat everything on this diet. And I thought, geez, okay. So I gave it a go, and the diet gives you a good selection. You have 3 meals and a dessert, and each day. And there was fibre in it because you had broccoli and cauliflower, apples and fruit and bananas. So I did that. I actually lost it took me, I think, around 4 weeks, and I got down to a size 10. So I was able to, did it nice and slow, because after 3 days, you can eat normal. But of course, I was so conscious, because it made you conscious of how much food to intake. So when I followed that 3 days, I'm thinking, okay, that's a good portion. And I was happy with that amount. And I did a little bit of exercise and just moved around and up and down the road and back. And yeah, I went down from a 14 down to a 10 in about 4 weeks.
4 weeks, that's incredible. I want to go over to Chantelle now. She's the expert with all of these diets. You hear people saying, you know, I've lost so much weight in over 2 weeks now. Is that realistic to keep that ongoing, as in to keep the weight down? Because you hear a lot of diets, they're successful for a period of time, but in the long run, do they work or do they not work?
So all diets basically work in the short term. So if you modify what you're eating, most diets work. Especially the fad diets, they tend to work on the principle of you're making major modifications to what you're eating. Usually you're cutting out something, whether it's processed foods, whether it's carbohydrates, whether it's fats. They'll cut something out of what you're currently eating, force you to change it in some way. Susana, as you said, it makes you more conscious of what you're eating. So even if you're not following it all the time, you're still going to be more conscious if you're not. The problem with fad diets is that they typically aren't sustainable. So those changes are really difficult to maintain, especially if you factor in things like social life or wanting to eat out, or potentially, you know, having a pandemic and maybe being stuck at home closer to the kitchen a little bit more often. It can be really, really difficult to actually stick to those sort of fad diets because they do tend to be overly restrictive. And I know that somebody has put in the comment section, are all carbohydrates bad? I might touch on that. Absolutely not. There are lots of really healthy carbohydrate containing foods. I would look at things like fruit and whole grains and barley and oats and legumes. Like there's lots of foods that have carbohydrates in them that are very healthy and really good for bowel health. But a lot of the really popular thing recently has been low carb diet. So there's been the Atkins diet and the South Beach diet, and now it's the keto diet. And all of those diets kind of work the same way. They all restrict your carbohydrate intake so that you do lose weight. Initially, it'll be mostly water. And if you're doing intermittent catheters, that can cause a problem. You need to probably do more frequent catheters if you're starting a ketogenic kind of diet. But they're just very difficult to maintain in the long term. And they can also affect, one of the things on here was gut biome, your microbiota. They can cause really big changes that can also affect your bowel regimen, which is pretty important for most people. I'm happy to delve into that a little bit more or get some other perspectives.
Yeah, now good. So someone also asked, are all carbohydrates bad? And my question is, what is a carbohydrate? What type of food are we talking about?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a carbohydrate is, at its base, it's any kind of, it's got a very specific chemical structure, but essentially foods that have sugar or these long chains of starches, which are basically the same molecules that are in sugar linked all together in a long chain. And in terms of our food, typically those come from the inside of plant cells. So almost all carbohydrates are based on plant cells. If you're looking at things like flour, for example, that comes from the inside of wheat. And when we're looking at whole grains, those are the good carbohydrates. Those are where you're eating the whole plant cells. So you're getting all of the nutrition inside the plant, and you're also getting a lot of fiber from the walls of the plant. Whereas when you look at refined carbohydrates, those are where they've taken away, they've stripped out all of the rest of the plant, and they're just left with the carbohydrate portion. And then they can break that down. You'll see it a lot on nutrition labels if it'll say like corn syrup or fructose. Those are natural sugars that come from plants. But the rest of the plant has been pulled away, and you're just left with this refined sugar product, and your body can break it down really, really quickly and easily. And carbohydrates are important because they give us energy. That's the main thing. Our brain loves to run on sugar. It likes glucose. And your body will do a lot to help you keep your blood sugar levels stable. So carbohydrates are found in foods like fruit, vegetables, and like some starchy vegetables like corn, potatoes, peas, whole grains, so like barley, oats, legumes like beans and lentils, and things like bread, pasta, rice, all of those kinds of foods contain carbohydrates.
Okay, so try to avoid them.
Well, there's more like there's complex carbs and there's simple carbs. So, yeah, Chantelle can sort of maybe give a bit more.
Yeah. So when I say those sugars, they're really little molecules. They're usually like one or two things linked together, and your body can just break that apart and turn it into sugar. That's what we call simple carbohydrates. And then the complex carbohydrates are these really long branching kind of molecules, and your body has to work a bit harder to break those down. And sometimes it can't. And so those get into your large bowel and actually feed the bacteria there. And so those foods are really important for keeping your bacteria healthy and happy, which is very important for overall health, and also has a role to play in weight management, which is emerging science, but it's really an interesting area. But yeah, so you shouldn't avoid carbohydrates if you'd like to have a healthy gut, I would say. But it's really those heavily processed foods that are the issues. That add lots of added sugar, things like soft drinks and biscuits and chocolate. And it's important to include those things for enjoyment if you like those kinds of things, but it's really about how much and how often.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks, Chantelle. Bryn, some of the guys talked about being active, Duke talked about being active, Antonio, the same, pretty much all of us guys now. It's really hard if you don't know how to be active, especially if you've lost motivation in this COVID environment where people have got a fear of going out and doing what they normally would, as in going for a walk or a push or whatever. What do you suggest people can do around their homes, just to keep active, to get some of the weight off, including, I'm thinking things like, I don't know, Thiedeman or going for a 20-minute push or walk. Got any suggestions around that for people?
Yeah, I think they're all good suggestions, Naz. It is tricky in the current environment, particularly if people were, gym people beforehand. Duke, you mentioned you like to go to the gym. I think things like TheraBands and free weights are great. Marcus's suggestion of taking the dogs for a walk. There is sort of relatively low cost equipment you can get for home, like some basic arm cycles, and then they're moving through to some bigger, more expensive equipment. I suppose that depends a bit on people's funding as well. I think really the key is to find things that you like to do, and maybe if you don't love doing the exercise itself, doing the exercise because you see a really clear benefit. So, people report doing those TheraBand exercises at home can help your shoulder, keep your shoulders feeling good, help maintain a bit of strength for your, for your transfers. And I also just want to just don't be hard on yourself at the moment either. We don't need to feel bad that we're not exercising quite as much as we should be, because this is a pretty tough time for everyone. So do what you can. Keep it simple as well. Don't create really long, complicated exercise plans, because it becomes a little bit daunting to complete. So if there's one or two things you can get done each day just to keep moving, then I think that's good enough for the moment.
No, thanks, Bryn. Just on that as well, I mean, when it's okay for us to do, live our normal lives, get out there as much as we want, just setting ourselves a program. I mean, what would like a basic program look like for someone? Is it getting out for, 20 minutes a day, or getting out for 20 minutes a day every second day?
I can talk you through sort of the current exercise guidelines. So these are based on kind of the science. So they've done some research, and then a panel got together and decided on what they thought was the best thing to recommend. So two to three sessions a week of strength training for all of your your working muscle groups, and that can be TheraBand, body weight, cable machines, free weights, all that sort of stuff is good. And generally you do about 3 sets of between 8 and 12 repetitions as a guide. And we want each of those sets to be pretty challenging. So the last couple of reps of each of those sets should be feeling pretty tough. You want to try to progress that if you can. So once it becomes too easy, you want to try and bump it up and increase the challenge and see if you can get a bit stronger. In terms of the aerobic exercise, the current recommendation is about 2 to 3 sessions per week of 20 to 30 minutes at a time. And that sits a little bit lower than what is recommended for the general population, because this panel who came up with these recommendations, they took into account that people with spinal cord injury have to balance this with the demands of their everyday activities. So if you do a whole lot of really taxing exercise and then that makes it harder to transfer because you're tired, then that's going to be counterproductive. But that minimum of about 2 20 to 30 minute sessions a week will improve your fitness and your health. And you can certainly do more than that if that fits in with your life.
Very good. Thanks very much, Bryn. Marcus, there was a couple of questions here for you. You might have answered them already, but a couple of people actually asked about the type of equipment you use, as in the hand cycle and that new ski you mentioned.
Yeah, it was Georgina. I'll share that information with people. The ski erg, they have been around for a couple of years, and I actually, when I was going to the gym at GSAC there, they used to run a wheelie fit, basically a morning exercise program for people with disabilities, okay, people wheelchair bound. So they actually run exercise classes there at the Glen Iris Sports and Aquatics Centre. And up in the gym there, our trainer introduced me to that ski erg machine. Very, very easy to use. It's very, very low impact. So you're not putting a lot of stress and strain on your joints, but you're pushing and pulling. So in the chair, as we know, anatomically, our bodies aren't really designed to propel our weight forward from behind. So hence, we get a lot of rotator cuff and shoulder injuries if we don't maintain good shoulder health with internal, external rotations and those particular types of exercises. But this is a push and pull and a really good balance exercise. So the machine I've purchased it's called a Concept 2 Ski Erg rowing machine. Now, if you Google, YouTube it, you'll see there's all different variations, but they're basically the same machine. That hooks up to your Apple iWatch. I run all my stuff through Apple iWatch 3 because for those that don't know, that watch has actually got a wheelchair algorithm in it. So it's basically you set it up, type in all your dimensions, and that basically, unlike people walking, wearing chairs, it calibrates and gives you your metabolic rate and calorie burn, okay, within a, 1 plus 5% sort of a difference. But it's very good at gauging, your energy expenditure throughout the day. So, and there's all different types of workouts on it, and I find that really, really helps. I also have got a Johnny G crank cycle, which with a removable seat, so you just basically wheel into it, and that offers various different types of hand cycle workouts: single arm, dual arm, reverse. Very, very good to get your heart rate up and do cardio, indoors. I've also, I've equipped myself here with a cable crossover machine. And I use a lot of TheraBands as well. They're very cheap, they're inexpensive, but they go up in different grades as in the resistance. So they're very cheap and affordable for everyone to use.
Excellent. While you're doing that, Marcus, I was just trying to find some photos that I might be able to share with people. But I guess if people take note of it, they can Google it and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Or we might bring those photos up later on. Just a question to anyone now. Someone made a comment. Catherine, she's got a sister who's got cerebral palsy, and she's what about gaining her weight? I guess that's the same situation with all of us, So how do you answer that question? I think it's something around just getting active again and watching your diet. Not sure. Anyone want to try to answer that one?
Yeah, if I may, Naz, I can probably answer that a little bit, the best I can. Just quickly on Marcus's point on his crank cycle as well, and I'm not sure how Marcus finds this with his level of function, but with my level of function, I got a Jimmy G crank cycle as well. And the only reason I got it compared to a lot of other crank cycles is that both arms are independent from each other. And my right arm is more dominant than my left arm. So I found using some crank cycles, my left arm wasn't doing as much work as my right arm. So that was one of the benefits I found, that I can actually train my left arm at the same level as my right arm. And that actually helped a lot of function through that side, which I found really effective for my level of function. So if there's anyone out there that has that similar issue, then it's a really beneficial piece of equipment, really versatile. On that point about weight management, so I mentioned before about losing weight, for me, and I mean, Chantelle and Bryn can probably elaborate on this a bit more, but for me, it was about finding what worked for me. So I tried different fad diets and I tried different exercises. So I found certain foods, whether are carbohydrates or not, my body would react to, and certain foods didn't. So it was really just experimental for me. But even on the exercise, for me, the weight management with exercise was, I try not to do, like, I'll do a little bit of weights, but I'll try not to do heavy weights, because I find I put on too much weight by lifting heavy weights. So I'll use a TheraBand, I'll do something different compared to that. But and for me, it was all about accountability, and part of that as well was I found at times I was eating for the sake of eating. It's like I would have breakfast for the sake of having breakfast. I wasn't hungry. I would go out for lunch with friends. I wasn't hungry, but because everyone was having lunch, I would have lunch. And then I'd get home. It's like, I'd look at the clock and it's like, well, it's dinner time, so I almost felt like I had to eat. And I got to the point where I was putting on weight regardless how much I was exercising. So I sort of decided, well, you know, it's a really simple thing, and it's not great socially sometimes. It's one of those sacrifices I paid, but for me, you know, but I told my friends as well. It's like, look, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm trying to achieve. So they were aware of it. I wasn't just turning up going, well, I'm not eating whatever. It's like, hey, look, I'll come if I'm hungry. I'll have something small, and they adapted. So for me, it was also, I ate when I was hungry. Like, I let my body tell me when I should eat. And that may not work for everyone, but I found that's how, once again, I would stop overeating, to be fair. And that was my weight management thing. And over time, I've read more and more. And, you know, we spoke about different diets, and, you know, there's diets out there that are based on fasting, and they don't work for everyone, but I found that they work for me. And I found that I was doing it without even knowing it. And I found that worked for me. But once again, you know, Bryn and Chantelle can speak more on that. So I accidentally stumbled on what worked on for me. I don't limit the type of food. I used to, but now I just eat when I'm hungry, essentially. And, you know, that's sort of my management around it. So.
Good, thanks, Antonio. Here, I'm going to try to combine two questions as one. We talked about hydrocarbons. Someone said, so is a higher intake of protein preferred? For example, steak, chicken, and lamb chops in losing weight. And also, do we need to reduce the amount of grains, lentils and beans and cereals? Not sure if anyone can speak to that. I think Susana?
Yeah, I can say that I did the Atkins diet as well, and did the protein, and look, lost a lot of weight again. It was
the Atkins diet, Susana, so what was that mainly involved in?
The Atkins diet is basically, you know, for breakfast you can have 2 eggs, 2 sausages, 2 pieces of bacon. It's not really restricted on how much protein you eat.
Lots of protein.
And you just had to drink, but you had to not have, for about 3 days, no carbs whatsoever. So you had to detox your body out of not having any carbs for 3 days. Yeah. And then once you've reached that 3 days, your body goes into ketosis. Yeah. And yeah, that's another way that, you know, that people, you know, have recommended. And then you can start introducing your vegetables and nuts. You can have nuts and things like that with the Atkins diets, and you can just move around with it as well. So yeah.
Can I on ketosis as well? I found I went, when I would do a restrictive sort of diet, I found that, and one of the side effects, and then I looked into it and did some reading on some research and some studies into it. One of the side effects I found of ketosis was it changed the, I guess, pH within my bladder, which caused me to get an overactive bladder, which with the spinal injury isn't great. So I don't, other people may manage that differently. And then I looked into it and read, some research studies in it, not Google, but, actual some studies in it, and found that was quite common. So that was a deterrent for me for, living with a spinal cord injury for that kind of diet. That may not be for everyone, but from my experience, that was an experience.
I'll just comment on that. So yeah, Antonio, you're absolutely right. A really high protein diet, your kidneys have to process all of those protein byproducts. That's one of the things when your doctor checks your blood, they're looking at those protein breakdown byproducts in your blood, and your kidneys have to get rid of those. And if you eat a lot of protein, then it puts more strain on your kidneys, but it also does alter the pH of your urine. And because of that change, it means that you're also more likely to get urinary tract infections because the bacteria can grow more easily in that higher pH environment.
Good, thanks very much for that. I reckon we'll come back to this as well, because people are probably going to want to know more. Another one here, someone asked about alcohol. I think alcohol became a lot of people's best friends during the COVID environment. And has it? And does it actually increase your weight gain? You know, a lot of people think, I only have a little bit of wine or, you know, scotch or whatever. And because I'm having a little bit, it's okay, you know, as long as I eat good, I'm going to be okay. But it doesn't work that way. And is alcohol like a serious weight gainer? Because I think a lot of people would have been dabbling in, you know, bottles of different stuff. I know me and Duke shared a few drinks online. And it's good, you know, it's a social thing too. So I'm not sure if anyone has any comments on that, if it does increase, you know, your body weight.
Yeah, I'll let Chantelle give her professional opinion, but yes, alcohol, you will put on weight with alcohol, because most of the time, yes, everyone says 1 or 2 glasses of wine. Yeah, that's fine. But if you have a look at the calorie intake, most alcohol, yeah, contains calories. The least amount of calories you'll find are in white spirits. So like, you know, your gin, your vodkas and stuff. And if I'm going to have a little bit of a drink, I like to have that with a soda water and a dash of lime or lemon juice, because it keeps the calorie intake down. But most of these other ones are attached to sugary mixes like bourbon and cokes, and they are very extremely high in calories. And yeah, very easy to put on weight if you have a few of those every couple of days. You agree with that, Chantelle?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the mixers can make a big difference. And the alcohol itself, one thing that people often think is that it's the mixer alone, but alcohol itself has a lot of calories in it. So if you think about, so carbohydrates and proteins have about 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram. Alcohol has 7. So if you're thinking about shot for shot, a shot of alcohol is kind of the same number of calories as if you were drinking a shot of cream, in terms of what that looks like. So if you're having a standard drink, like a glass of wine or a beer or a spirit that's got 1 shot, or if you're making it a double, it's like you're having that much cream in terms of the calories. And that can be a good way to think about it, because it is very calorie dense. And certainly alcohol is a great stress reliever, and it's great for socializing, and it's absolutely, once in a while it can be really nice to have a drink with friends, but it will contribute to weight gain if you're drinking a lot, or if it becomes a really consistent habit. Those calories definitely add up, and they're not calories we tend to account for or notice. So that can also make a difference.
And if I could, I know Naz, you were around, we were friends when I went through this. I didn't drink for 3 years, and part of that was more in relation to, because I was playing wheelchair rugby and I was taking that fairly seriously, the effect that it had on my exercise. So not just like obviously the working harder to keep that weight off, but then if I was having some drinks, if I had to exercise, even if it wasn't a lot of drinks, if I had to get up and exercise the next morning, I did feel sluggish, to be fair. And I felt, you know, Ben and Bryn can probably speak on it. I did feel that it did impact me, and whether that's because it dehydrated me and my body had to process all that and whatever things. But yeah, I cut out alcohol for a long period.
No, good. Just want to go back to Duke. I know, like, hopefully no one here is a heavy drinker, but, you know, we do socially, you know, say to friends, we'll catch up Friday or whatever, bring your BYO, all that sort of stuff. Has that been a problem for you, Duke, you know, to, you know, catching up online or whatever with friends, having a few glasses of red, or but being conscious of it, you know.
Well, to tell you the truth, I had never started drinking until I met you, Naz. So, and that was on a Friday. So
I do that.
But I think what we've got to realise here is that doing things in moderation. You know, having one glass of wine on a Friday and socialising with your friends is probably quite spiritually good for you. The real trouble is that when you go outside moderation, and that is where you go back for seconds, you go back for thirds, and then it becomes a proportion size. You know, if you really want and you are dedicated enough and have a mission to accomplish in losing weight, then it's not a matter of completely denying yourself of all the things you like, because that becomes really, really hard. And what happens is that's when diets, I reckon, fall over, because you stop doing it because it becomes denial of all the lovely little things that you want to do. So I'm probably not the right person to preach this, but do things in moderation. Reduce and change your meal portion sizes, and you'll find that you're still doing the things you like doing, having a drink with your friends, but do it in moderation. And so the reason why I was originally asked to be on this panel is because I was going to do stomach banding. And I tried a lot of diets. I was doing a lot of shake diets and things like that, and I wasn't having any success. And as I said to Marcus before, my discipline is really bad. I found it really hard to proportion size my meals. And unfortunately, I was going to go and play for Australia in para badminton just when I was going to get the stomach banding done. And unfortunately, the drugs that I would have been taking would have prohibited me from playing. So I stopped. I didn't do it. Probably regretting that now. But anyway, that was the reason.
No regrets, Duke. No regrets.
No regrets. No regrets. I'll still have a drink with you though, Naz.
Yeah, no, good. When I ask people now, look, we've talked about, we know what to do, you know, right from wrong, being conscious and all that sort of stuff. But the trick is staying on track. So how do you stay on track? You know, how do you set yourself a program, like a diet program or, you know, exercise program, social activity program? How do you keep at it, you know? Do you have like a program where you do it with a friend, for example? I know a lot of people say that helps, being found accountable, because when you're doing it with someone, you're actually accountable because, you know, they're relying on you and you're relying on them. And not sure if anyone is doing that sort of stuff or has got any other ideas, because the trick is actually doing it. We know what to do, but how do you do it?
Yeah. I think it's all about meal planning. What I've done in the past, not that I've always had issues with weight loss or everything, but I'm always curious about being healthy and how to maintain. So I went and bought a really good calorie counter book, which allowed me to have studied what was in a slice of bread, what was you know, a pinchful of salt, and it gave me an idea of what sizes of things and portion sizes for the diet to lose the weight. And I just think that if you start by the beginning on the weekend, write yourself a list of what you want to do from Monday to Friday. And then I think that's how I would manage, or that's how I've managed to do the dieting and keep you on track.
Is that a suggesting goal? Setting yourself goals.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure these goals are attainable. If you set yourself a real goal of, oh, I want to lose 50 kilos, it's probably unlikely that you'll achieve your goal. So set a realistic goal is the trick.
That's right. I think at the beginning, I think if you went and saw a doctor and perhaps asked their opinion, That's a really good way of getting them involved, having yourself have some blood tests done and just see if, you know, if there's any underlying issues that you have with your weight before starting any diet program too. That's important.
Yeah, I agree with Susana. Every year I get a full blood screen.
Yeah.
Just to see how I'm gauging with obviously activity, diet and stuff. And yeah, just recently it came back that obviously we haven't had a lot of sun around, so I was deficient in vitamin D. I've also got full-blown osteoporosis. Most of us have 10 years post-spinal cord injury, and I can't eat a lot of dairy because I'm lactose intolerant, so I opt for more sort of plant-based proteins and other things of the like. But it also said I was deficient in iron. Reason being, I ditched the red meat and was going more plant-based, but there's different types of iron, as Chantelle would know. Some are utilised easier in the body, some not so, as in the plant variety. So that's a great idea to start. Get yourself fully checked out, and that way you can gauge and under medical advice as to what the best way is to proceed. So I agree with what sort of Susana said. But as far as the exercise routine, you've got to establish a routine first, okay? And then with it, don't set big goals. If your goal is just to get for 20 minutes or 15 minutes a day, that's attainable, that's achievable. Don't set yourself too big a goals that you won't be able to achieve. Start small and let it form a habit. You know, that may take a few weeks, but once you form that habit, you're more inclined to stick with your own program and make yourself accountable. Because if you're not training with a partner, you're not disciplined, you're going to find it very hard to keep yourself accountable. So, you know, give yourself a pat on the back and reward yourself too. If you've stuck to your diet, allow yourself that little cheat meal or something that you enjoy, a slice of pizza in front of the footy and whatnot, because you'll be more inclined to stick to the program if you allow yourself those rewards. You know, like for me, yeah, we've all got our routines to work around and so forth, but I like to get my training done in the morning because I know sometimes, depending on my body and how I'm feeling, 6 o'clock news and I'm not training. So I try and set my routine up for success, get everything done. That way in the evening, I don't place pressure on myself to do those other things. So, you know, you've got to do what works for you, basically.
I think on the accountability thing Marcus spoke about, I find, you know, during COVID, I've had to adjust, obviously not being able to physically go and train somewhere. And to Marcus's point as well, getting it done in the morning, I find that if I say, especially training at home around work and study, it's like, I'll just do it tonight. Come 7 o'clock, I won't do it. It has to be done, has to be sort of, but for me as well, I also found that there were times that I set myself up to train at home. And once again, I wouldn't do it. Personally, I need to physically leave the house to specifically go to training. So my mindset is I'm going somewhere to train or to, you know, whether that's by myself, with somewhere, or whatever. So, and having played team sports, that I've had that luxury as well, and having training partners as well. So look, yeah, we'll meet this time at a court, we'll do whatever. Because I think sometimes, you know, obviously access is difficult, and I appreciate that for, obviously living with spinal injury, but for myself, I had to get out of the house, otherwise I just wouldn't train. And that was my accountability. Like, yeah, I would say to someone, I'll meet you there. And as opposed to setting up too comfortable at home, to be fair.
No, great. Marcus just said a choice word there about habit, making things a habit. And the hardest thing, Bryn, I want to see if you can answer this one. The hardest thing is taking that first step or doing something for, 2 weeks, for example, knowing that I'm going to go for a walk every second day for 20 minutes, doing that for a while before it becomes a habit. Because when it becomes a habit, it's like second nature, but that's the hardest thing to get to.
Yeah, I think Marcus's message of starting small is really the way to go. It could be as simple as, if your goal is to do 20 minutes of exercise a day, you could start with 1 minute of exercise, or you could start with 2 minutes. And then once, as you said, once you got that established as a habit, you can build on it from there. if you straight away jump to 20 minutes, especially if you haven't done anything for a while, you're likely to get sore, and that can be discouraging after that. If you start small, establish the habit, and give your body time to adapt, then yeah, that's a good way to work into it. I want to plug a book actually here along those lines. I promise I'm not getting any money for it. So it's called Atomic Habits. I'll put a link in the chat by an author, James Clear, and he summarises that actually. So for anyone who's read that, I reckon that's that book really resonated with me as a kind of system to keep you on track with whatever your behaviour change goals or lifestyle goals you have. It's a really good framework to use, and he gives you hints on how to establish, your good habits, and also ways that you can make your, I don't want to call them bad habits, but less helpful habits harder, because they're the ones you want to phase out. So I'll put the link in the chat.
Just repeat that the name again.
It's called Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
Yeah, I'll punch that in now.
Okay, and by who did you say?
James Clear.
James Clear, yeah. Just for some people that might want to watch this later on who won't be able to see the text.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's answer some of those questions that are coming up. Dennis asked, people have mentioned weight loss, but it's not that easy to measure weight in a chair. So we can't just go on a weight machine and sort of see how many kilos we are. A lot of us rely on going to the Austin or wherever to jump on the machine, and then you've got to know the weight of your chair and do some maths. But how do you, in a nutshell, know if you're gaining or losing weight? Do people measure their weight in a chair, as in how much space they've got between the wheels, maybe, or other techniques where measuring body size with a tape measure, for example?
Yeah, no, I saw that. I saw that, and one of my guides was I left Royal Talbot in a size 18 wheelchair, and after 2 years I was in a 16 and now in a 15.5. So to me that was one guide, but also just the way clothes fit is the big thing. If the shirt's too loose or pants are too tight, then yeah. But that marker of chair width size for me was a big one on how much, you sort of don't realize it sometimes until you sort of get that new chair and you think, oh, like it's really hard to gauge even when you're in that chair. But once you sort of see it visually, then that was a great marker for me.
Good. And Susana, got a thumbs up from you. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that I actually just measured, areas around your biceps, your chest area, your tummy, your thighs, and just write them down, and then don't do it every day. You would do it at the end of the week, or wait for 7 days and then do it again. And you can measure it and just write it down if you don't have because I never had anywhere to go at the time. And clothing, yeah. Clothing is a very good.
Watching your clothing, yeah.
Yeah, but I did use a tape measure.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, just on that too. I mean, people also measuring and looking at this BMI, body mass index, for people with paralysis, don't go off that guide either. Because, I mean, most measurements for able-bodied people will show that people are almost overweight with that body BMI indexing. So, I go and use and wheel onto a weigher at the local vet. I mean, there's one at the Royal Talbot. Is that still there, Nars? The machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two at the Austin Hospital as well.
Oh, okay, yeah, because most hospitals have them as well, but it is quite hard for us to weigh ourselves because, yeah, you get in the chair, then you've got to jump off, put your chair on and subtract the weight of your chair. But the easiest way would be what Susana says and Anthony is gauge by the way your clothes fit and do the odd measurements as well. But, some of us also suffer at times. So I know if I have too much sodium input, I get a bit of fluid retention in my legs and my feet and ankles. And as soon as I ditch the sodium again, but you're carrying that water weight. And sometimes, you know, you're putting out big catheters of 500 plus because that's water weight. So all these things will impact your normal weight, whether you weigh yourself before your morning routine, after. You know, horses for courses, everyone's different, and every spinal cord injury is different. But, you know, you've got to be kind to yourself and listen to your body too with all your exercise and stuff. If you saw, my old mantra when I was training and playing sport and in my old field of work was, well, if I was sore, it was just pain or weakness leaving the body. Well, let me tell you now, I was in my 50s with a spinal cord injury. I listen to my body a hell of a lot more now than ever, because we need that extra rest. We need that extra recovery time as well.
One of the easiest ways to weigh your chair, of course, is to get somebody, when you're on the bed or something, and get someone to hold onto the chair and know what their weight is, and then add the chair to it. And then you'll know the weight of your chair, which won't vary very much. And then you know roughly what your chair is. And then eventually when you go somewhere, then you'll know what the weight is, what your weight will be, because you know, just deduct the chair from it. So to get to, you know, it's easy enough for a person who's able-bodied to stand on a scale, and usually, 15 kilos or something for a chair. Most scales will accommodate that.
Yeah. Got a question here now. I mean, where people with lived experience, Chantelle's the expert and Bryn's got an expert as well. Now, if people wanted to find like a dietitian, I don't know if anyone can answer this. I know there's people in the community regarding NDIS. Now, can people have that in their plan to find a dietitian, that can help write a program to them and just keep them on track? Or even the TAC for that matter.
I think your local council actually can give you a dietitian.
Yes.
They can. I think the people at Talbot, it wasn't Chantelle, but somebody at Talbot said, "Oh, just go and see your local council," and they have like a health service, and they'll even provide the dietitian for you.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So a lot of local community health services will have a dietitian that's available as a community dietitian, and you can access that through your GP, or sometimes you can just self-refer to the community center. As far as NDIS goes, yes, you can access a dietitian through your NDIS as well. So typically, you need to show that you have a need for it, but then you go to your support coordinator and say, hey, I'd like to see a dietitian, and they can talk to you about who you can see. So it depends on how your plan is managed, but typically you can see a private dietitian and the NDIS will reimburse you for the cost of that, as long as it's included in your plan. But if you go to a community dietitian, usually the fees are extremely affordable. There are also some dietitians through like gyms and things like that, but I'd recommend, you can look on Dietitians Australia, or check your community health center, because those people are going to be sometimes in private practice, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Like certainly everybody they're a university qualified dietitian if they're advertising that way. Just be a bit cautious if you're looking at people that are not an APD, so an accredited practicing dietitian. Anyone can call themselves a nutritionist in Australia, and it's not a regulated term. So if you're seeing somebody who's a nutritionist, they might be giving you perfectly good advice, and they might be really supportive and really helpful, but NDIS will not usually pay for that because it's not a regulated health professional. So and they can say whatever they want. So they can tell you really anything, but it might not be based on any kind of evidence. So just be a bit cautious if you're seeing somebody who's saying they're a nutritionist rather than an actual dietitian.
And
sorry.
Now go on, Drew.
Naz, I'd just like to go back about the thing that I told you I went to gym. I did a lot of research to find there are a lot of gyms around, but the real trouble is they're not really suitable for people in wheelchairs. So I did my research, and so I got in contact with the TAC and I said, look, I really wanted to have a physiotherapist come with me and structure a plan at this particular gym, which was Watermark in in Greensboro, and they had equipment that I didn't even have to get out of my wheelchair to do cardio, to do rowing, all the rest of it, and quite a varied type, about maybe 4 or 5 pieces that allows the seat to be removed so that I could just replace it with my wheelchair. And it was really good, but you've got to do the research and find out and take a professional with you to make sure, just like Marcus is saying, start off properly and don't overdo it thinking, oh, well, I'll just do what I think I need to do. It just doesn't work that way.
Perfect. And we talked about accountability as well. I mean, you know, taking that first step about contacting a dietitian, an approved dietitian to hold you accountable to. So you do take seriously what they say, you know, what sort of diet to do or what sort of exercises you need to do. So, yeah, I think that's a good way to go, especially if you feel like you're stuck. There's a question here. This one's a tongue-in-cheek one, I think, but I'll just read it anyway. Do the antioxidant benefit in wine outweigh the sugar? I think that's enough. You're not going to drink wine for the antioxidants. I think some people might, might be looking for an excuse. Adrian mentions diets are too difficult, and every time she loses weight, it comes back. It all starts again. You know, it's like a never-ending cycle. So, is that got to do with maybe some of these diets that we were talking about earlier? You know, they're successful for a few days and the weight comes back, but how do you lose weight in the long term?
Can I answer something to there? You don't ever lose weight. That's a fallacy brought about by weight loss people. It never gets lost. It just changes its form.
To what? To air?
Whatever way it could be disguised as, but to think that you've lost it.
Okay. Well, so how would you answer that? I mean, is there a particular way? Are we doing it wrong? You know, if we're losing weight and
I think it's
coming back straight after,
it's a life choice. You've got to change. If you're really thinking seriously about losing weight, it's a life choice, and you've got to change your ways. If you have been following a program, I think even Weight Watchers, people say, you know, the Weight Watchers go by the point system. I mean, that's a fairly realistic one, but you can stay on there forever, not have to, because they allow alcohol. You know, they go by, you can have your sweets, you can cheat. So if you really wanted to and stay on a diet, and you don't have to call it a diet, just, you know, just because it's Weight Watchers, you can just call it a healthy eating regime, and you're just using that system of eating.
Yeah, I would add to that. To me, it's really about finding what's going to work for you in the long term. So I don't generally recommend diets per se, because they get you to eat a certain way for a little while, but it's not the way that you really want to eat. And so if you're not making changes that are going to be acceptable to you for life, then you're going to regain weight. Because if you go, oh, well, my diet's finished, I've hit my goal weight, and now I just get to go back to eating whatever I want, then of course the weight is going to come back on. Whereas if you focus on making those really sustainable changes, and I really like what Antonia said earlier about eating to your hunger and satiety cues, like thinking about, do I actually feel hungry, or am I eating for some other reason? Am I eating to fill an emotional need? Am I eating because I'm bored? I think that's one that got a lot of people, including me, during COVID. You know, you're stuck at home, you go, oh, maybe I'll have a snack. But listening to your satiety cues and finding what's going to work for you and what you can keep doing in the long term. And even if that's looking at a lot of different diets and going, oh, I like the elements from this one and I like the elements from that one. It's about finding a good pattern that's going to be sustainable and that you can see yourself continuing to stick with for forever, basically.
And on that as well, like we speak about accountability, or a few of us have, and to me, the biggest thing for my thing is, well, why did I want to lose weight? For me personally, it's like I didn't want to lose weight. People say I want to lose weight. It's like, well, and how much weight do you want to lose? Like, really be specific. It's like people say I'm going on a diet to lose weight. How much do you want to lose? Like, what's your target? What does that look like? You know, will you reward yourself when you get to that? You know, and the purpose for actually losing it. So for me, it was I was taking sport more seriously. I wasn't happy with the way I looked. And you know, so there was that. Those were the motivators, and that held me accountable, because you see a lot of people say, well, I just want to lose weight. It's like, well, why are you losing weight? It's like, well, because everyone else is losing weight. There are diets all over the TV and all that kind of stuff. There's no mental accountability to it. And I think that's, you know, the first step before any of what we're talking about as well. Yeah, even with exercise, it's like, oh, you know, to Bryn's point, you want to do 20 minutes. It's like, well, that's to lose weight. But if you set yourself a goal, it's like, you know, you want to do 5Ks, you know, if AQA, you join a fun run, whatever, do you want to do that? You know, so I think sometimes having the purpose behind doing something is a real motivating factor.
Yeah, I have to, if I can just jump in too, it's educating yourself around the right food choices, like going to McDonald's, buying a Big Mac and having a Diet Coke on the side, just doesn't have the mustard, you know what I'm saying? So it's making and educating yourself around making healthy food choices.
Yeah, exactly.
And Naz, can I ask Chantelle a question, please? Chantelle, we're all talking about weight loss, but there must be a situation where people want to put on weight, because it's not only a loss situation, that some people find it very hard that they've lost too much weight and want to rebuild it. Have you got any sort of like clues to assist people in that regard?
Yeah, so that's actually a more common problem than you might think. When I was working in the community, I saw a lot of people that unintentionally lost a lot of weight after their injury and wanted to gain back weight. And we need some body fat for padding. If you're thinking about things like pressure injury prevention, particularly, having a little bit of extra padding is really useful. So it's kind of the opposite advice to losing weight. Usually when we talk about weight loss, we think about what are we going to take out of our diet, but I like to think about what are we going to add into our diet. So maybe if you're thinking, oh, I want to lose weight, you're going to add in more vegetables, for example, or add in a piece of fruit. If you're thinking I want to gain weight, then you want to add in some of those higher calorie kinds of foods. So maybe you make the switch from like lower fat milk to full cream milk, or maybe you add in nuts as a snack, or hummus, because those are a little bit more, I mean, those are good snacks anyway, but you're trying to think about where can I add a snack in, or am I feeling really full? And that's why, so then do I need to maybe add extra butter, or add an extra serve of protein? So if you're trying to put on weight, I always think about the adding principle. Can I add some oil to my vegetables so that you're having some heart healthy fats? Or if you're having toast, if you might have jam, you know, could you put some butter underneath the jam? And those same kinds of things do work in reverse. But even things like if you're eating a lot of vegetables, could you add dip so that you're getting some extra calories that way? That's what I would focus on for people that are wanting to put weight on. And especially if you're thinking about building muscle, like adding in extra serves of protein over the day. And if it's really a concern, talk to a dietitian, because there are some really decent supplemental products out there as well, like protein supplements and things like that. But there are a lot of products on the market just generally that are less helpful. So I would be talking to your doctor or dietitian about before you add in a lot of supplemental things.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry, can I ask you a question, Chantelle? I think it's probably going to be of benefit and value to most of us. When I left and I was researching and trying to select the right people to give me additional advice from what I already knew, looking at paras and quads, a moderately active para, sort of my level, I'm high level, what calorie intake or how many calories a day should one consume as a para, sort of high level, then look at low level, and then look at quads? Because I think people would benefit from sort of giving a ballpark figure of the calories that we need to be consuming to maintain weight.
Yeah, so if I was calculating that for somebody, I would calculate that based on your current body weight or an adjusted body weight. So if you had your weight before your injury, I would adjust that down by, so for a paraplegic, I would adjust it down by 5 to 10%, depending on the level. So a higher level would be more towards 10, lower would be more towards 5%. And for a tetraplegic, I would adjust it down by 10 to 15%, again, depending on the level of the injury. And then I'd be looking at, so for a paraplegic, 100 to 115 kilojoules per kilogram per day. And then for a tetraplegic, I'd be looking at 95 to 100 kilojoules per kilogram.
Can we do that in calories?
I can. If you give me 2 seconds, I've got my conversion form. So I think in kilojoules, that's so for a long-term paraplegic, it would be 27.9 calories per kilo per day, and for a quadriplegic it would be 22.7 calories per kilogram per day. So like that's a ballpark figure, but it does give you something to kind of aim towards. I always think about those kinds of guidelines as it's like you're aiming, you're shooting a bow and arrow, and you're kind of looking at the target, but then you close your eyes before you actually release it, because it's very individual. It depends on your activity levels. It depends on how much lean mass you have. It depends on all sorts of things. But that's a bit of a guideline. So yeah, roughly 28 calories per kilo for paraplegics and roughly 23 for quadriplegics.
Okay, Chantelle, you're actually spot on, because for those, I'll show you this. When I left, I was after all that information, and I found it hard to sort of find the right people to assist me. But what Chantelle said is actually correct. And for those that want to know, here's a really, really good book, reference point for eating well and living with a spinal cord injury. It's got all the information that Chantelle's given us on calories. There's recipes. It's just a fantastic reference guide. Eat well, live well with a spinal cord injury. And the 2 experts that wrote it are very, very highly qualified. One of them's a quadriplegic of 30 plus years. So she's actually got lived experience with spinal cord injuries. So this has got everything from recipes to exercise to calories to foods to neurogenic bladders. The whole lot's in there, and that's been a ready reference guide for the last 10 years, and I still use it now. I'll put information in the Q&A or live so people can. Yeah,
no, that's great. Marcus, yep.
No, just quickly, I always spoke with Chantelle about access to dietitians. Maybe we could ask the same question to Bryn about people that were looking to get access to exercise physiologists. But also with Bryn, you mentioned before about the balance between somebody with a spinal cord injury exercising and then impacting things like transfers and that. What sort of is the line, I guess, or a threshold that people should be looking at? And I saw in the comments just quickly now, as a young member called Josh mentioned fasting. And it's something that I've sort of done with it, like I said, without even knowing I was in that fasting. And like I said, personally, it worked well for me. It's something that I sort of fall back to, but, you know, get proper advice. You know, a lot of stuff that I've read about a lot of these diets as well is that, you know, there's a science behind why some of them work in some people and some don't work in other people. So, you know, like I stumbled across it, but then I looked into it, why it would potentially work on me. But I think, maybe go to Bryn as well on the exercise physiology.
Yeah. So the question is fasting good or bad?
Well, I would answer it's good, but I don't think it's for everyone. So
Bryn, were we going to say something about that?
About access to exercise physiology. That's definitely, like I work, you know, in inpatient rehab, but that's something that we put into people's NDIS plan. So NDIS can support people to see an exercise physiologist. TAC is the same. And I know that both of those bodies can also fund things like personal training if the circumstances is right as well. So yeah, there certainly is support for those things. I think the second part of your question, Antonio, was about balancing things like transfers with your exercise routine. I think there is a little bit of trial and error in that, and it is a bit individual depending on the person. You know, it sort of depends on what type of transfers you do and how easy you find that. I think basic things like the timing of your exercise sessions. So if you are doing a huge 2-hour gym workout and that exhausts you for the remainder of your day to the point where it compromises your transfers, then it would be worth backing off on that a bit. But I think it's really just working out what works for each person.
No, very good. Look, we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes now. I think what we'll do now is I'll read the questions out and we'll try to answer them pretty quickly and finish off with a take-home message from everyone. So the first question is, what is average energy usage, calories, for a female manual wheelchair user? I guess that's going to be the same with males. So I don't know if anyone's got an answer to that. You may have answered it, Chantelle, earlier.
Yeah, so I would say that there's not really a significant difference in terms of energy needs between males and females when you're calculating it out. It really depends mostly on your lean body mass, so that active tissue that's burning energy. And if you're active, you're going to have more of that. So we don't actually have a difference between men and women. It's just that women tend to have smaller bodies on average, and so you can still use that. That's why we give it in calories per kilogram, because that accounts for body size.
Yeah. And this one here, I think we've already answered it. Wal said, does having a spinal cord injury affect your metabolic rate, and does it affect calorie burning? So I think you mentioned that, Marcus and Chantelle, earlier. And you were just going to say something there, Marcus?
Yeah, well, I've noticed myself is that I've been very active, wheelchair sports, AFL, and all the other stuff I do on the side, as well as personal training and so forth. The older I've got, since I'm in my 50s now, but my metabolic rate has slowed down considerably. So I can't eat the same amount of food that I used to and get away with it. I'll put on weight if I eat the same amount of food I was eating 4 years ago, for sure. I've definitely noticed the older you get, your metabolic rate or your metabolism definitely does slow down.
Someone made a comment here that they're using, actually it was Colin said, he's using Light and Easy for interesting meals and proportion control. Interested in feedback on those meals?
Yeah, I've used them, and I use them periodically. I might use them for a month. Then when I get sick of cooking or get sick of my partner's food, I'll go back on that. Yeah. But really, really good for nutritional macros as well as portion control. And some of the choices are actually quite good. That's my experience, yeah.
I've tried Light and Easy, and they're a little bit expensive, and I found that quite a bit of food gets wasted, and it's a little bit of a storage problem in our fridge to have the Light and Easy products in the fridge to keep them fresh till the end of the week. You get them on a weekly basis and they get delivered. Yeah. The thing is that I got in contact with them to see whether they could give me a specific setup for, because I was in a wheelchair, as opposed to they give it for a standard male, and they said that they weren't able to do that with their regulation size demonstration meal. So I went to the smallest one that I could get, and it was still a bit large.
Christopher made a comment here, meat and cheese, even chips. His body seems to handle okay, but as soon as he has pasta, the airbag deploys and turns to weight. Any comment? Like I asked, what's next do you recommend when losing weight? So I'm not sure. Is that something like, instead of chips, for example, would you eat nuts? I'm not sure if is that where that's going? What's next do you recommend when losing weight?
Yeah, so I mean, I would look at what you can add in that's going to be focused on those kind of the whole foods. So could you snack on, say, veggies with dip, or could you have maybe some rice crackers with some hummus, or something that's going to get you nutrition, but not a lot of extra energy. If you're focused on weight loss, like nuts are a great snack, but they're also very energy dense. So you can only really eat a small handful of nuts for a lot of calories. If that makes you feel satisfied, that's great. If you're looking to replace something like chips, if you're looking for that kind of salty crunchy, I would often recommend popcorn as a good alternative, because you can, especially if you make it yourself, you can control how much salt and butter is on it. It's a whole grain, so you're getting a good amount of fiber, and it really satisfies that kind of salty, crunchy, sitting in front of watching a movie that chips might also fill, but for a lot more calories. So that can be a good option.
Thank you, Chantelle. I just made a note of that for myself. Benny Fiber works wonders is a comment. We talked about fasting. Is that good or bad? Got a question here. If losing weight means losing body fat, how does that affect our chance of getting a bed sore or pressure sore? I think we talked about that earlier as well. So I guess, yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to answer that again.
I mean, I can hop in there again.
Yeah.
So if you lose too much body fat and you lose too much of that padding, yes, it can increase your risk of getting a pressure injury, because your bones are basically pushing right against your skin on whatever you're sitting on or whatever you're lying on. Carrying excess weight, though, also puts you at higher risk of pressure injury, because there's more weight pushing down on your skin. So if you're thinking about losing weight and you're worried about like being too thin, that's where I'd start looking at adding in some extra snacks or something to try and boost you up so that you've got some fat mass there to protect your skin. But if you are looking at losing weight and you've got some weight to lose, then you'll be able to safely do that without putting your skin at risk.
No, good. Last question.
Can I just ask a quick question? Chantelle, is there fat and there is fat?
Sorry?
Is there fat like around the stomach and all the rest of it? And is that different from the fat that would go near the muscular area to support the skin? Or is there different foods that will help to not move it, but for it to be in a better place rather than in an area where it's bad?
Yeah, so there's two kinds of fat in your body. There's white fat and brown fat. Brown fat is more metabolically active, and we lose that as we get older. Generally, the fat that we store is stored as triglycerides, so it's all kind of the same no matter where it is on your body. The thing that can happen is sometimes, especially around your middle, we get fat. It's called visceral fat. So it's not underneath your skin, it's actually inside your abdominal cavity around all your internal organs like your liver and your kidneys and all that stuff. And fat also has a metabolism, and so it puts out waste products and it kind of dumps them around your internal organs, and that's not very good. And it's really just the general healthy eating principles that we've already talked about. There's no particular foods that are going to help you to burn more fat or burn fat in a particular place. It's really about your overall dietary pattern. So including plenty of fruits and vegetables, eating mainly whole foods, having things that are less processed, and sugar can make a big difference. If you're eating a lot of refined sugar, that can very easily contribute to putting on a lot of fat, especially around your middle. So
when you lose weight, do you lose the fat cells, or do they just diminish in their dimensions or something?
Yeah, so fat cells, the way that we store fat is they're kind of like balloons. So you blow them up, and eventually, if you blow them up enough, they'll divide, and then you'll have more of those little balloons. When you lose weight, you don't actually lose fat cells. They just sit there, but they kind of deflate, kind of like you're deflating a water balloon. And that the reason why it's so difficult to lose weight is that causes hormonal changes, because those fat cells go, oh, but I'm here. I want to I need this, I want to hold on to it. And that's what can really drive your appetite, because those fat cells, they kind of cry out to your brain and go, oh, I'm smaller, I don't like this at all. But yeah, unfortunately, once you have more fat cells, it's really hard to get rid of them without, say, liposuction, which does remove fat cells. But if you don't make diet changes, they'll just grow back. So.
Good. Thanks very much, Chantelle Duke. One final question here, just regarding energy. So are almonds better than cashew nuts for energy? So I guess this is someone for training to get like maybe energy bursts. Not sure.
Almonds and cashews are pretty nutritionally similar. Almonds have a little bit more protein and a little less fat per serving, but in terms of nutrition, they're quite similar.
Good. Well, let's go around just a take-home message for the guys out there. On my screen, we'll start off with Bryn, if that's okay, and then we'll go to Duke. So, Bryn, have you got a takeaway message for the guys out there?
Yeah, just to try and find things that you enjoy. You know, try and make your exercise fun. You know, team up with a partner, play your favorite music, reward yourself, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think just make small changes, try to achieve your habits gradually.
Very good. Thanks, Bryn. Duke, any takeaway?
Well, I think Bryn summed it up, but just do things. If you make something really arduous and a burden, you'll do it for a while and then give up and you'll be back to square one. Do like what Marcus is doing, do it very, very structured, and do the research and get assistance to know what to do. That's the most important thing. Do things in moderation.
Marcus, have you got a takeaway message for the guys?
Yeah, slow and steady will always win the race. Be kind to yourself, enjoy life, and healthy body equals a healthy mind. In particular, with all this COVID stuff and all the negativity around, go out there and enjoy life and do things that make you happy, and that incorporates a little bit of exercise and eating better every day. Well, then you're achieving better things today than you did yesterday.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Marcus. Antonio?
I don't think I've got anything else to add that hasn't already been
much covered
said, there.
Susana?
And for me, I think, everybody said is just be kind to yourself and don't be too hard, because at this, particular time, it's very, very hard. But I think if you have a lot of weight to lose, or doctors, nutritionists, all those people are there to go and help.
Yeah, good.
Just take your time. Be kind.
And Chantelle?
I would say making those small acceptable changes and then kind of stacking them on top of each other is what's going to lead to that long-term success. Making sure it's acceptable, that it fits into your life. One thing I often like to say is diet's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's what you do day in, day out on repeat that's going to make the big difference. Not that one time when you go out to dinner with your friends when COVID is over and we're all celebrating. It's really about the day in, day out habits and enjoying a variety of foods in moderation is the most important message, I would say.
Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Can I just add, I did hear that the Mediterranean diet is meant to be fairly sustainable.
That if I was going to recommend a single dietary pattern that has been well researched and is really supported by the literature, yes, the Mediterranean diet has the best evidence in terms of sustainability. It includes a variety of foods. It's mostly plant-based, but it includes a good amount of protein. It also, the other thing about the Mediterranean diet is it focuses on enjoyment of food and the social aspects of enjoying food. And those things are so important as well. So yeah, if you're going to look into one diet, look into the Mediterranean diet and look at the principles that you could adopt for your own lifestyle, because that's a really great place to start.
That's fantastic. Look, I want to thank everyone for being on the panel. I think the participants and people out there got a lot out of it. So Bryn, Duke, Marcus, Antonio, Susana, and Chantelle, thanks very much for being on the panel. And Sal, you're there in the background, so thanks with heads up on the questions coming through. So if anyone's got questions along the way or want to get in contact with us further, please contact either Sal or myself, and yeah, we'll try to get the questions over to Bryn, Chantelle, and the other guys if they're happy with that. So thanks again for everyone for helping this be a fantastic webinar as usual.